Welcome to this journey through one of the most disturbing cases recorded in the history of Tennessee. Before we begin, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact time you're listening to this narration. We're interested in knowing which places and what times of day or night these documented accounts reach. In the spring of 1909, a letter arrived at the office of Sheriff James Thornton in Henderson County, Tennessee. Written in an unsteady hand on stained paper, it came from Isaac Blackwood, a reclusive farmer living in the remote hollows near the Tennessee River. The letter described unnatural occurrences on Blackwood's property, livestock found mutilated, strange sounds in the night, and, most disturbingly, the disappearance of his wife, Martha. County records show Thornton initially dismissed the letter as the ravings of an isolated man, filing it away with little investigation. 3 weeks later, when neighboring farmer William Cooper reported that the Blackwood property appeared abandoned, Thornton finally dispatched deputies to investigate. What they discovered at the isolated farmhouse would initiate one of the most disturbing investigations in Tennessee history. The remoteness of the property complicated matters from the beginning. Hidden within a densely wooded valley, where the surrounding hills blocked the morning sun until nearly 10 o'clock, the Blackwood homestead existed in a perpetual twilight that even at midday cast long shadows across the yard. According to statements given by the deputies who first arrived, there was an immediate sense that something was wrong. Birds fell silent as they approached the main house, and their horses grew increasingly agitated, refusing to move closer than the outer edge of the cleared land. The initial report filed with the county clerk noted a pervasive atmosphere of decay and abandonment, despite evidence suggesting the property had been occupied less than a week prior. The Blackwood homestead sat on approximately 85 acres of densely wooded land, much of it unsuitable for farming due to the rocky, uneven terrain. According to county records, Isaac Blackwood purchased the property in 1901 after relocating from eastern Kentucky. He arrived with his wife Martha and their 2 children, Rebecca, 10, and Samuel, 8. Neighbors described the Blackwoods as private but not unfriendly, though Isaac became increasingly withdrawn after 1907. The property featured a modest 2-story farmhouse, a barn, and several outbuildings. Most notably, the homestead included a natural limestone cave entrance on the northern boundary that local children avoided due to persistent rumors of strange sounds emanating from within. The cave had been partially modified by Isaac, who built a heavy wooden door across its entrance, secured with multiple locks. When questioned by curious neighbors, he claimed to use it for food storage due to its naturally cool temperature. Martha Blackwood, according to church records from the nearby Riverside Baptist congregation, attended services regularly until early 1908, when her appearances became sporadic and eventually ceased altogether. The pastor, Reverend Thomas Miller, recalled in his statement to Sheriff Thornton that Martha had appeared increasingly distressed during her final visits, requesting prayers for her husband, who she described as changing in ways I cannot comprehend. Samuel Hawkins, who owned the general store in Henderson where the Blackwoods purchased supplies, noted that Isaac's purchasing habits had shifted dramatically in the months before the family's disappearance. His ledgers showed increasing quantities of lantern oil, candles, and preserved foods, suggesting preparations for extended periods without leaving the property. Most curious were Isaac's repeated inquiries about specialized tools typically used in mining or geological survey work. Sheriff Thornton's deputies arrived at the Blackwood property on the 17th of May, 1909. Their official report, preserved in Henderson County records, described an unsettling scene. The house appeared hastily abandoned, with meals left half-eaten on the kitchen table and clothing still hanging on a line outside. No human remains were found, but the barn contained the carcasses of several animals in various states of decay. Most disturbing was the discovery of elaborate markings carved into the doorframes and windowsills of the house, geometric patterns intermixed with symbols resembling astronomical notations. The deputies reported that the locked cave entrance showed signs of recent activity, with fresh scratches around the lock and footprints in the soft earth leading both in and out. Unable to open the heavy door and disturbed by the atmosphere of the property, they returned to report their findings, recommending a more thorough investigation. One deputy, James Wilson, included a personal note in his report that was subsequently removed from official records but preserved in his family papers. Wilson wrote that as they were leaving the property, he distinctly heard what sounded like a woman's voice calling from the direction of the cave. Though none of his colleagues claimed to have noticed it, he described the voice as distorted somehow, as if speaking through water or from a great distance. When Wilson moved to investigate, the sound ceased, but he reported feeling an unaccountable dread that prevented him from approaching the cave entrance alone. The disturbing conditions at the homestead, combined with the unexplained disappearance of an entire family, prompted Sheriff Thornton to expand the investigation beyond his initial skepticism. Sheriff Thornton, now taking the matter seriously, led a second expedition to the property on the 21st of May 1909. This time they brought tools to open the cave entrance and conducted a more thorough search of the house. In the main bedroom, beneath a loose floorboard that showed signs of frequent removal, they discovered Martha Blackwood's hidden journal. The leather-bound volume, spanning entries from January 1907 to April 1909, documented Martha's growing concern about her husband's behavior. Early entries described Isaac spending increasing time in the cave, returning at odd hours with a strange pallor, and refusing to discuss his activities. By late 1908, Martha wrote of hearing voices that are not voices coming from the cave at night, and of Isaac's insistence that the family avoid certain parts of their property at specific times. Most troubling were her final entries, which mentioned Isaac's new associates, whom he would meet at the edge of the property, people Martha described as moving in a manner that troubled the eye, and speaking with voices that seemed to echo before the words were said. Her last entry, dated the 30th of April, 1909, read simply, "He has placed the crystals throughout the house now, claims they will prepare us for what comes next. The children are frightened. Something scratches at the windows at night. Isaac says they are merely curious. I fear what he has invited here. Tomorrow I will take the children and leave while he is in the cave." Martha's journal revealed a woman increasingly isolated and afraid, not only of her husband's deteriorating mental state, but of something more tangible that she believed he had somehow summoned or attracted to their property. The journal made clear that whatever had happened at the Blackwood homestead went beyond a simple case of abandonment or domestic disturbance. Following the discovery of Martha's journal, Sheriff Thornton expanded the search to neighboring properties, where they made a crucial discovery. The Blackwood children, Rebecca and Samuel, had fled the homestead 3 days before the deputies' first visit and had been taken in by the Cooper family on the neighboring farm. The children, now 18 and 16 respectively, provided disturbing accounts that were recorded by Sheriff Thornton on the 23rd of May 1909. Rebecca explained that their father had changed dramatically after discovering the cave system in 1907. Initially, he had been excited about using it for storage and possibly as a tourist attraction, but after exploring its deeper sections, his behavior began to shift. He started sleeping during daylight hours and working through the night, often in the cave. Samuel reported seeing his father carrying strange crystalline objects from the cave to the house, objects that seemed to glow with a faint bluish light in darkness. Most alarmingly, Rebecca described overhearing an argument between her parents in early May, during which Isaac told Martha that they were coming through whether she approved or not, and that the barrier was thinning. The night they fled, both children reported hearing their mother's screams coming from the direction of the cave, followed by a profound silence that prompted their escape. According to the children, Martha had planned to leave with them the next morning, but after hearing her screams, they feared for their safety and ran to the Cooper farm. Their testimony suggested that Martha Blackwood had likely met with foul play, possibly at the hands of her husband, and that the cave system held the key to understanding the family's dissolution and Isaac's apparent mental decline. On the 25th of May 1909, Sheriff Thornton assembled a team to investigate the sealed cave, including Dr. Thomas Harper, the county physician, William Cooper, who knew the property, and 3 armed deputies. The heavy wooden door, reinforced with metal bands and secured with 3 separate locks, required considerable effort to open. Dr. Harper's notes, preserved in the County Historical Society archives, describe an immediate sense of unnatural cold upon entering, despite the late spring warmth outside. The temperature difference was so pronounced that their breath formed clouds in the air, and several men reported feeling a pressure in their ears similar to a rapid change in elevation. The cave entrance had been modified with wooden flooring and walls lined with strange symbols similar to those found in the house. Lantern light revealed that the natural limestone formation had been expanded and reinforced, with tool marks indicating extensive human modification. Approximately 20 feet into the passage, they discovered a second door, this one appearing to be made of metal with an unusual locking mechanism unlike anything the men had seen before. Most disturbing was the discovery of blood traces on this door and on the cave floor, blood that Dr. Harper would later confirm as human. After several attempts, they were unable to open the second door and resolved to return with appropriate tools. Before departing, Dr. Harper collected samples of a crystalline substance growing in patches near the door. In his notes, he described these crystals as exhibiting properties inconsistent with any mineral formation I have encountered, being simultaneously cold to the touch, yet emanating what appears to be heat when observed through my spectacles, creating a visible distortion similar to that seen above a flame. Concerned by the unusual symbols found throughout the property, Sheriff Thornton reached out to Professor James Elliott at Vanderbilt University in Nashville. Elliott, an expert in ancient languages and occult symbolism, traveled to Henderson County on the 2nd of June 1909 to examine the evidence. After studying the markings carved into the house and photographing those found in the cave entrance, Elliott provided a preliminary analysis that troubled the investigation team. He identified the symbols as combining elements from several ancient writing systems with astronomical notations and what he termed non-Euclidean geometric formulations. In his formal report to Thornton, preserved in university archives, Elliott suggested the symbols represented some form of barrier or containment language designed to separate spaces that should not intersect. Most significantly, Elliott connected the symbols to similar markings found in a cave system in eastern Kentucky 10 years earlier, a case that had ended with the disappearance of an entire family and the subsequent sealing of the cave by local authorities. Professor Elliott's report included a disturbing personal observation that he initially hesitated to include. He noted that while studying the photographs taken inside the cave, he began experiencing unusual auditory phenomena. Specifically, what sounded like whispered conversations at the edge of hearing that would cease whenever he tried to focus on them. After 3 nights of disrupted sleep due to these experiences, Elliott burned the photographs, after which the phenomena immediately ceased. He advised Sheriff Thornton that whatever Isaac Blackwood had become involved with extended beyond mere superstition or mental instability, suggesting something that challenges our understanding of natural boundaries. On the 5th of June 1909, Sheriff Thornton's team returned to the cave with equipment to open the metal door. After several hours of work, they managed to disengage the unusual locking mechanism, revealing a passage that descended steeply into the limestone formation. Dr. Harper's detailed notes described chambers that appeared partially natural and partially modified by human hands, with evidence of extensive excavation. Their lanterns illuminated a complex of rooms extending far beyond what would be expected of a simple storage cave. The walls bore more extensive versions of the symbols found in the house, now arranged in concentric patterns around what appeared to be a natural limestone column in the central chamber. This chamber contained evidence of regular human presence: a desk with papers, several journals, written largely in code, and scientific equipment, including what Dr. Harper identified as surveying tools, and a telescope modified for unknown purposes. Most disturbing was the discovery of 5 distinct sets of footprints in the soft cave floor, despite the Blackwood family numbering only 4. The 5th set displayed an unusual gait pattern that Dr. Harper noted suggested an abnormal distribution of weight, or possibly an anatomical configuration unlike standard human locomotion. The expedition also discovered a small sleeping area with bedding, suggesting Isaac had spent extended periods living in the cave. Sheriff Thornton collected the journals and papers for further examination, while deputies mapped the accessible portions of the cave system, noting several passages that appeared to extend deeper but were too narrow for adult exploration without specialized equipment. Professor Elliot spent the following 2 weeks attempting to decipher Isaac Blackwood's journals and papers found in the cave. While much remained indecipherable, written in a code that combined conventional alphabet with the strange symbols found throughout the property, certain passages became clear enough to paint a disturbing picture. Isaac's earliest entries described his accidental discovery of what he termed thin places within the cave, where the barrier between here and elsewhere was weakest. Initially approaching these anomalies with scientific curiosity, he documented systematic measurements of these spots, tracking changes in their properties over time and correlating them with astronomical events. Later entries grew increasingly erratic, referring to voices from beyond and entities seeking entrance. By 1908, Isaac wrote of conducting communications across the threshold and receiving knowledge not meant for human minds. Most significantly, entries from early 1909 mentioned Isaac's belief that he had established communication with something on the other side, and his efforts to widen the aperture to allow physical passage. His final decipherable entry, dated the 14th of May 1909, stated simply, "They have promised knowledge beyond imagining. Martha refuses to understand the importance of this work." The children show fear rather than appreciation. "Tonight, I open the way." Elliot's analysis, submitted to Sheriff Thornton on June 19, that is 7 at Cried H., concluded that Isaac Blackwood had become convinced he had discovered a portal to another dimension or reality, and had been working methodically to open this portal despite his family's growing terror. On the 20th of June 1909, having studied Isaac's journals, Sheriff Thornton organized a larger exploration party, including experienced cave explorers from Chattanooga. Better equipped with improved lighting and climbing gear, they discovered previously unnoticed passages leading deeper into the limestone formation. The official report describes their descent through increasingly narrow tunnels to a depth estimated at over 200 feet below the entrance. The air grew noticeably warmer as they descended, contrary to normal cave conditions, and several team members reported difficulty breathing despite no detectable reduction in oxygen. At this depth, they discovered a chamber with unusual acoustic properties, where whispers would amplify and normal speech would produce echoes that seemed to return with subtle variations, as if the words had been slightly altered. Team members reported feeling disoriented in this chamber, with several experiencing visual disturbances described as seeing movement where none exists, and colors that have no place in darkness. The most significant discovery came when their lanterns illuminated a far wall of the chamber to reveal what appeared to be a perfectly circular opening approximately 7 feet in diameter. Unlike the rough limestone of the surrounding cave, this opening appeared to be lined with a smooth, glass-like substance that no tool in their possession could scratch. Most disturbing was the observation that small objects placed near this opening would slide toward it, as if drawn by a subtle but persistent force. The team noted that their compasses failed to function properly in this chamber, with needles spinning erratically, preventing accurate mapping of their location relative to the surface. Recognizing the unusual nature of the discoveries, Sheriff Thornton contacted authorities at the state level, resulting in the formation of a research team from the University of Tennessee. Led by geologist Dr. Samuel Weathers and physicist Dr. Eleanor Hughes, the team arrived on the 3rd of July 1909 with specialized equipment including more sensitive measuring devices, photographic equipment, and what Dr. Hughes referred to as detection instruments, recently developed for military purposes. This team established a base camp near the cave entrance and began a systematic investigation of the cave system over a 2-week period. Their reports, partially redacted before being filed with state authorities, documented several scientific anomalies within the deepest chamber. These included unexplained temperature fluctuations, compass needles that would spin continuously when brought near the circular opening, and photographic plates that developed with strange distortions when exposed in certain areas. Dr. Hughes's notes, made public decades later, mentioned detecting radiation of an unknown type emanating from the circular opening, and observed that this radiation intensified at specific times, particularly during astronomical alignments that corresponded with notations in Isaac's journals. Most concerning were her observations about the circular opening itself, which their measurements indicated had expanded by approximately 3 inches in diameter since the sheriff's team had discovered it 2 weeks earlier. In a private communication to her university superior, Hughes expressed concern that whatever process Isaac Blackwood had initiated appeared to be continuing despite his absence, suggesting that the aperture possesses a self-sustaining expansion mechanism that operates independently of human intervention. On the 17th of July, 1909, during what was intended to be their final day of research, Dr. Hughes and 2 research assistants failed to return from the cave at their scheduled time. After several hours with no communication, Dr. Weathers organized a search party that entered the cave system with additional security measures. Upon reaching the deepest chamber, the search party discovered the researchers' equipment scattered around the circular opening, which now appeared larger by approximately 6 inches in diameter. Dr. said. Weathers reported hearing what he described as voices speaking in overlapping patterns, as if multiple conversations were occurring simultaneously coming from beyond the opening. Most disturbing was the discovery of a single boot belonging to one of the assistants, positioned at the very edge of the opening with drag marks in the cave dust, suggesting that something or someone had been pulled through. After several hours of searching and calling without response, the surviving researchers retreated to the surface. In his urgent telegram to state authorities, preserved in university archives, Dr. Weathers wrote, 3 researchers missing. Evidence suggests impossible passage through aperture. Anomalous phenomena accelerating. Recommend immediate sealing of entire system. Situation beyond scientific explanation. Request immediate government intervention. This incident transformed what had begun as an investigation into a missing family into something far more disturbing, with multiple educated witnesses now confirming phenomena that defied conventional understanding and the disappearance of 3 additional people under circumstances that could not be explained by natural causes or criminal activity. News of the disappearances reached state authorities, resulting in the arrival of federal representatives on the 22nd of July, 1909. A contingent of men in unmarked black automobiles established a perimeter around the Blackwood property, restricting access and turning away local residents. This chapter details how officials from what was described only as a scientific bureau in Washington took control of the investigation, establishing a command center in tents erected near the cave entrance. Local newspaper accounts, notably from the Henderson County Gazette, reported unusual equipment being transported to the site and the construction of temporary structures near the cave entrance. Several residents reported hearing strange mechanical sounds throughout the night and observing unusual lights emanating from the property. Dr. Weathers, in a personal letter preserved by his family and made public in the 1960 seconds, described the federal team as unusually knowledgeable about the phenomena we had only just discovered, and noted their reference to similar incidents in other locations. Most significantly, he mentioned overhearing a senior official referred to the circular opening as a persistent breach, and discussing containment rather than exploration as their primary objective. Sheriff Thornton was informed that the matter now fell under federal jurisdiction due to concerns of national security, and was instructed to cease all local investigation efforts. His final report, filed on the 25th of July, 1909, notes his compliance with this directive, but expresses frustration that the whereabouts of Martha Blackwood and the true fate of Isaac Blackwood remain undetermined despite clear evidence suggesting foul play. Throughout August 1909, residents in the vicinity of the Blackwood property reported unusual phenomena. The Henderson County Gazette published several accounts from reputable citizens describing unexplained lights in the night sky, livestock behaving erratically, and several instances of people experiencing lost time, periods of several hours they could not account for. The newspaper accounts were generally skeptical in tone, attributing many reports to heightened imagination following rumors about the government presence at the Blackwood property. However, personal diaries and private correspondence from this period, preserved by local families, suggest widespread concern among residents. William Cooper, the neighbor who had sheltered the Blackwood children, documented multiple instances of his dogs displaying extreme distress at nightfall, refusing to remain outdoors regardless of the weather. Most notably, 3 separate witnesses described encountering strangers of unusual appearance on roads near the property, individuals who moved with mechanical precision and spoke in voices that seemed to originate from elsewhere. Cooper reported that his dogs refused to bark at these figures, instead cowering in apparent terror. The most disturbing account came from local physician Dr. Martin Wells, who was called to treat a child suffering from unexplained seizures. The child, upon regaining consciousness, described dreams of people who are hollow, wearing skins that don't fit right, and insisted that they want to wear us next. Several families reportedly abandoned their homes in the immediate vicinity, citing unspecified concerns for their safety despite financial hardship this caused during harvest season. By early September 1909, the federal team had completed their investigation. County records indicate a flurry of activity at the Blackwood property, with numerous wagons bringing supplies and equipment. Local men hired for manual labor reported being tasked with mixing vast quantities of concrete and transporting it into the cave entrance. These workers were required to sign confidentiality agreements and were only permitted to work in the outer portions of the cave system. Partially redacted reports, released decades later under the Freedom of Information Act, reveal a decision to permanently seal the cave system using a combination of dynamite to collapse the main passages and a specially formulated concrete mixture to fill remaining spaces. Most notably, the reports mention the installation of monitoring devices at several points around the property and the establishment of a regular inspection schedule. Property records show that the federal government purchased the entire Blackwood homestead from Henderson County, as the family was presumed deceased, and designated it restricted land. The official explanation given to local residents was contamination from natural gas deposits, making the area unsafe for habitation. A small permanent facility was constructed near the former cave entrance, ostensibly for ongoing environmental monitoring, though locals noted that the personnel stationed there changed frequently, and the building was surrounded by fencing with warning signs prohibiting trespassing under penalty of federal law. Rebecca and Samuel Blackwood never returned to Henderson County. Court records show they were declared legal orphans in October 1909 and placed with separate foster families, Rebecca in Nashville and Samuel in Knoxville. Both received monthly stipends from an unspecified federal fund until reaching adulthood. Documents from the Henderson County Historical Society include a statement from Rebecca given in 1930, when she briefly returned to file paperwork relinquishing any claim to the family property. In this statement, she recounted her father's gradual transformation from a religious man to one obsessed with what he called the spaces between stars. Most significantly, she revealed that in the weeks before the family's dissolution, her father began speaking in his sleep in voices that were not his own, and that her mother had discovered strange blue crystals growing on his skin after his lengthy sessions in the cave. Rebecca's statement ends with her firm assertion that whatever returned from the cave that final week was no longer my father in any way that matters. Samuel Blackwood's fate followed a darker path. Military records show he enlisted in the Army in 1917 and served in France during World War I. Upon his return, hospital records indicate multiple admissions to veterans' facilities for what was then termed shell shock. But what his doctors noted was accompanied by persistent delusions regarding entities from beyond seeking entrance to our world. He died in 1924 under unclear circumstances, with his death certificate listing misadventure as the cause. His personal effects, sent to his sister, included a journal containing drawings of symbols identical to those found in the Blackwood cave. In 1952, as part of scheduled monitoring, a federal team conducted a comprehensive inspection of the sealed cave system. Documents declassified in the 1,980 seconds reveal surprising discoveries during this process. Despite the extensive sealing operations conducted in 1909, monitoring devices had detected movement within certain sections of the cave system. Upon drilling small test holes through the concrete barriers, inspectors reported hearing what sounded like whispered conversations and detected air currents flowing inward rather than outward, suggesting spaces beyond that had not been fully sealed. Most disturbing was the discovery that the specialized concrete had developed crystalline formations similar to those described in Isaac Blackwood's journals. Photographs included with the report show these formations arranged in patterns resembling the symbols found throughout the original investigation. Samples removed for analysis reportedly displayed properties similar to those noted by Dr. Hughes in 1909, including radiation readings that fluctuated in patterns correlating with certain astronomical events. The inspection team recommended additional sealing measures and increased monitoring frequency. Their report included a concerning observation that the original circular opening, though buried under tons of concrete and collapsed stone, appeared to have maintained its integrity according to sonar imaging, with the surrounding materials showing signs of gradual degradation. A handwritten note on the file margin, initialed by the project supervisor, states simply, "Containment failing. Request permission to implement Protocol Omega-7." Subsequent records indicate that in 1953, a much larger operation was conducted at the site, involving military personnel and specialized equipment transported under cover of darkness. The Blackwood case continues to echo into the present era. In 1978, historian Margaret Hollis from the University of Tennessee discovered connections between the Blackwood incident and similar cases in West Virginia, 1,898, Eastern Kentucky, 1,899, and Northern Georgia, 1,912. All involved remote properties, unusual cave systems, and individuals who exhibited behavioral changes after spending time in these caves. Her research, published in the Journal of Appalachian History, suggests these cases might represent a pattern rather than isolated incidents, possibly connected to geological formations specific to the Appalachian region. The Blackwood property remains restricted government land, now ostensibly part of a wildlife conservation area closed to public access. Satellite imagery shows regular structural updates to the monitoring facility, indicating ongoing activity despite the passage of over a century since the original incidents. Local residents still report occasional unusual phenomena in the vicinity, particularly during certain astronomical alignments that correspond with those noted in Isaac Blackwood's journals. Most recently, in 2018, digital monitoring equipment placed near the former cave entrance recorded a series of low-frequency sound patterns that, when analyzed by linguistic software, revealed structural similarities to human speech, but with syntax and phonetic elements unlike any known language. Perhaps most disturbing, certain phrases appeared to match phonetic transcriptions found in Isaac's journals from 1909, suggesting whatever he communicated with continues its attempts at contact. For those who know where to look in the remote hollows of Tennessee, the warning signs remain. Some secrets are buried not because they are forgotten, but because they are too dangerous to unearth. The boundary Isaac Blackwood sought to cross may have been sealed, but as his final journal entry warned, once opened, such doors can never be truly closed again.